Meanwhile, the plight of Hindus in Bangladesh is also a grim reminder. You put that out beautifully, Pandit Satish K. Sharma. So just quickly bringing and taking this conversation forward with our guests, the other angle of the Hindu attacks on the minorities, largely Hindu in Bangladesh, they still continue. Tensions that have plagued the subcontinent since partition in 1947. Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council have highlighted the violent attacks against minorities in Bangladesh. They claim minorities have faced 205 attacks in 52 districts after the fall of Sheikh Hasina government. Many desperate to escape the violence, mayhem and arson that has engulfed Bangladesh. The violence and attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh has raised alarms. Protests erupting in US, UK, Canada, calling for the safety of Hindus. Hindu community will meet the Chief Advisor Dr. Mohammad Yunus on Tuesday. And amid these rising attacks, authors and academicians have written to the central government highlighting the attacks. A pattern of targeted violence against Hindus, idols, temples destroyed across Bangladesh. Hindus endured repeated waves of persecution. They have written 2.5 million Hindus have been murdered since 1971. This data being quoted. Ongoing and systematic pogrom against Hindus. A Pakistani scholar has called it drip genocide. Amish Tripathi, the author, one of the signatories to this letter, mentioned this to us here at CNN News 18. Over 3,600 attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh since 2013. Authors and academicians calling for the parliament to push for humanitarian aid for those fleeing persecution. But the challenge is, how many do we let in and how do we check them? And can we really get it? Because will the local population, the natives of the states of our country, allow these into their own area because they themselves are pressed? So, pass a unanimous resolution is one demand. Demand 2 is condemn a wave of communal violence. 3 is collaborate with international bodies. 4th demand is provide humanitarian aid and asylum options. Let's go back to our guests, Abhijit Iyer Mitra and Pandit Satish Sharma. We are in a situation where Hindus across the world are speaking up. There are also those senators, non-Hindus who are speaking up, leaders, politicians have taken note. But there's a large ecosystem that is woken up finally after being goaded and embarrassed, Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
I don't think they've woken up, Anand. They're particularly shameless people who will flip-flop as and when it suits them. Do you remember, this is the same parties that were saying allow the Rohingyas in, that did not want the CA to be enacted, CA-NRC to be enacted at all. And now that you see in your face undeniable attacks on Hindus happening, they then ask, oh, well, why did you stop it off at 2014? You know, if you have this kind of in your face hypocrisy and going out of your way specifically to harm Hindus, then there's nothing you can do. These people will flip-flop over and over and over again. There is no accounting for them, you see. And they will continue with their lives. There's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, that's the sad reality of it.
Pandit Satish Sharma?
If we had already developed the maturity of a cohesive view of our civilization, we would be adopting something a bit more robust. I would have liked to have seen perhaps the Indian armed forces create a safe haven in the north of Bangladesh. It was absolutely justified. It's still justified. And if this action were to be taken under these circumstances with global condemnation from the diaspora, but also from allied civilizational voices, the Jewish community and other communities, I think that we could have actually justified the intervention. At least that way, we would have saved lives, we would have saved civilizational assets, and hopefully even the locations in the north where we do have a prominent and established Hindu community, that would have been saved. I think at this time, though, jo karta wohi bhatta, the first mover's advantage and justifying it afterwards is the way in which the international world order now works. In the past, we were not robust enough to act in that manner, but now we are. You know, one of the things that I'm so impressed with is that whenever the West seeks to destroy somebody, first it takes the moral high ground, and from the moral high ground creates a consensus and then destroys them. This is a toolkit they've used all the time, whether it's Iraq, now it's currently Iran, and they've tried it against Bharat for a long period of time. And if there's one thing that Prime Minister Modi ji cannot be faulted for, he has single-handedly pretty much dismantled the attempts to create that sort of anti-Indian narrative which would justify intervention, and done it to such a degree that were we then to step in and try and protect our brethren, our civilizational brethren, we would actually get a great deal of support from the African nations and other nations as well. I'm sure there are other considerations involved, But I think that had we been robust in the response, we could have actually have justified it.
The interesting part, somebody's just mentioned that to me, that a large number of these people who are fleeing Bangladesh and those who've been persecuted there, they're all Namashudras. They are the Matua community, largely who are in Bengal.
Correct.
They're referred to as the Matua community. Namashudras are SCs, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And they economically very backward in Bangladesh. The social indices of the minorities, largely Hindus in Bangladesh, is appalling. And look at the situation and look at the way they've been tormented. A Pakistani scholar, like I said, had called this drip genocide, that over decades this is what will happen. And you see it in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, how the minority population numbers are only shrinking by the years, by the decade. Contrast that to Bharat, where the minority numbers have only swelled, and we are very proud of that, because this is what the true expression of freedom is. This whole narrative of minority khatre mein, any minority, Musalman, Sikh, Jain, Baudh, Parsi, whoever, khatre mein in India, Isai, is so false, is so fallacious, Kamru Chaudhary.
Yeah, another very important question regarding the geopolitical situation in the entire South Asia, rather I will say. But you must understand, when in 1947, Lord Radcliffe, he drew the boundary line between India and East Pakistan as of then. Then it was the then Chief Minister of Assam, Gopinath Bordoloi. He did not want the Bengali dominated areas of the Barak Valley, or then erstwhile Surma Valley, to be included into the Indian Union. And that image of a Bengalis as a low life still continues in the mainstream of many people. I'm not quoting anybody out here, many people. And the result, what is there? Thousands have been lined up in the border for the last few days, wanting to come to India. And do you know, we all know Bangladesh was a fundamentalist nation from beginning. Every regime change happened, the minorities were attacked in Bangladesh out there. Even this time also, when a big vacuum was created in Bangladesh, the atrocities on Awami League as well as the Hindus and other minorities happened in Bangladesh. But do you know the most important reason for this was, why are the Matua communities wanting to come to India? It's because of the irresponsible Citizenship Amendment Act, through which 1.5 crore Hindus living in Bangladesh are in the line of fire of the fundamentalists in Bangladesh. The message on the streets and the villages of Bangladesh is, India is giving you citizenship, so please vacate Bangladesh. That is a very triggering statement that is going on in Bangladesh.
So you are justifying their fundamentalism. You are justifying their fundamentalism. No, please.
He justified the killing of the Hindus.
Extraordinary.
He is intellectually justified the killing of Hindus in Bangladesh and other minorities for being minorities in Bangladesh. This is exactly how they whitewashed the crime.
Let me finish first. I know I have triggered many with this statement, but it's a cruel fact.
I'm reminded.
You counter me. I know. Wait, one thing. The two states that are going to be most affected because of this influx, if it happens, of the Matuas or the other Hindus in Bangladesh to India happens, is going to be Assam and West Bengal.
Why don't you in the same way then say, why don't you in the same way, one minute, Kamru Chaudhary, I have a very small request. All that you have said is quite unpalatable, sir, and it comes from a very a thought process that many would question. But let me ask you, in that same way, why don't you say that every single Bangladeshi Muslim is a fundamentalist and should never be allowed in Bharat, and CAA should never be applicable to any Muslim from the neighboring Islamic republics?
You know what my statement is on your question?
Will you say it, sir?
Let me tell you. Any Bangladeshis, be it from 1994, where 17,000 Bangladeshi Muslims have been identified in Jharkhand, but still not deported.
Will you say it that the CAA should never be applicable to any Muslim from the neighboring Islamic republics or Islamic states?
100%. India is not a dharamshala.
No.
India is not a dharamshala.
So clearly, sir. So those who sat there to say Kagaz nahi dikhayenge and CAA and NRC, you agree they were wrong. You are agreed.
I am an Indian. I'm an Indian.
Sir,
born in
every
India.
Indian should
Anand
say
ji,
this, sir.
Anand.
They should not play this dangerous
But
game.
I will not accept any
And you have-
Bangladeshi, whether it's a
No,
Hindu
no,
or
no,
a
no, no.
Muslim,
Now
into
don't say
India.
any Bangladeshi. You just now said that the Islamic groups and Islamists are fundamentalists and they hate minorities and they will continue to trouble them. So then say in that way that not a single Bangladeshi, Pakistani Muslim should ever be allowed in Bharat to seek refuge under CA, and it should never be accepted there. Yes, Pradeep Bhandari.
And he, on your debate,
Pradeep Bhandari.
has justified the religious persecution of the Hindus and the other minorities in Bangladesh.
Except
this is exactly their thought process, which is the tukde thought process, which is where they speak about minorities, but when the minorities are Hindus, Buddhists and all, that is where they justify religious persecution. And this is where I relate it to their statements of allowing the Rohingyas. This is where their famous leader Digvijay Singh, who on September 27, 2017 attacks the government when saying that why are you not allowing the Rohingyas? So the issue and the principle and the essence, Anand, is that when you have a political party who for 60 years looked as Hindus as second-class citizens, did not give them the rights that they deserved, did not get in a CA, and when we get CA, when we talk about where there should be cross-party unanimity in what is happening in Bangladesh, this is the thought process, which is the tukde thought process, which is extremely evil, which you've been fighting on your panel. He's just justified religious persecution of Hindus in Bangladesh. It is sad, it is evil, it is inhuman.
Where are you going to keep them? Not in
No.
Assam,
It's
not
not
in
about where
Bengal.
are you going to keep them. You didn't ever ask this question about Rohingyas. You didn't say.
Can I take a 10 seconds for just Anand? They speak about the SCs. They speak about the SCs. Now, why are they not speaking when the SCs are the persecuted? I'll tell you why. Because even in Jammu and Kashmir, when they had Article 370 implemented for 70 years, you know, an SC person could not get a government job in Jammu and Kashmir, and they did not raise it. They've always done injustice to the SCs. What can you expect from them? I expected cross-party unanimity on your panel, or at least expecting that the Hindus in Bangladesh and other minorities are religiously persecuted.
Here is
But he justified it.
Here is the
I
thing.
mean, India
One minute. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, you've been listening to this. Now, isn't this the classic game? Those who espouse a lot of hamdardi for what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza, this is the response when it comes to it's a non-Muslim cause.
This we know before itself, Anand. You know, Kamru hasn't met a jihadist that he didn't like, a jihadist cause he didn't like. But let's leave that aside. He says CAA is encouraging all the neighboring countries to send them over. Bangladesh at the time of independence was 21% Hindu. Now it is 9% Hindu. There was
why
no
do you forget 1971?
Why
sir?
are you over? He didn't interrupt you, no, Kamru
I said
Chaudhary.
why
He
is
didn't
this
interrupt you, Kamru
1951?
Chaudhary. Listen to him, please. Let him make his point. Let him make his point. Don't heckle him. He didn't heckle you. Don't heckle him.
11% decline in population without any CA. Where did that population go? Do you know when Idi Amin was persecuting all the Indians in Uganda, and there was general persecution in the Tanzania, Kenya area as well? Nehru didn't want to touch them. He didn't want them to come back at all. They all had to go off to Britain, which is why Rishi Sunak's parents had to move from Kenya, and Preeti Patel's parents were kicked out of Uganda. At that time, the Congress didn't want to touch them. Suddenly 71 happens when it suits them. Yes, please, everyone come in. Okay, and let's not remember those 10 million people were Hindus. There were lots of Muslims in there as well. Possibly the majority were Muslim out there. So as long as they could train a guerrilla army and send it back, they were perfectly fine with it. Incidentally, people don't realize this. It was the training of the Mukti Bahini that ultimately caused the Naxals, because all the arms we supplied them refracted back in here.
Right.
Where was Dharamshala narrative of the Congress when we gave all the Jaffna Tamils refuge? Us time ye muh nahi khol rahe the. So what? Rajiv Gandhi was violating Congress policy. Indira Gandhi was violating Congress policy by letting all those refugees in. Tab Dharamshala tha desh, ab Dharamshala nahi hai.
No,
Can I reply?
It's a very sad state of affairs in terms of just for politics. You are going to really twist and turn your own points of view and throw logic out of the window. The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we have a challenge at our hands. We need to have a firm policy and we need to be steadfast in it, irrespective of who's in government. Because governance is a responsibility for everybody, and you cannot compromise on Bharatiyata, Bharat, and the interest of every Bharatiya. That this is something which is non-compromisable, non-negotiable. Let's hope good sense prevails across the board. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I've got to wind up on that note. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, the Pune ISIS module, the details. Stay with us.